For these death row inmates, the legal road has officially reached dead ends. As of February 2026, appeals are exhausted, warrants are signed, and executions dates are now on the calendar. This month, multiple high-profile cases are reaching an irreversible conclusion. Crimes that shattered communities and legal battles that have lasted decades. Today, we will examine who these inmates are, the brutal acts that put them there, and exactly what happens in their final 24 hours. These stories are fading into silence, and once the clock runs out, they're gone forever. Don't look away. Subscribe to ensure the truth behind these cases isn't buried with them. Ronald Palmer Heath, May 24, 1989, Gainesville, Florida. Inside the Purple Porpoise Lounge, the night is loud, crowded, and unremarkable, the kind of place where strangers cross paths and never think twice about it. Among the patrons is Michael Sheridan, a traveling salesman passing through town. He orders food, has a drink, and strikes up a casual conversation with two brothers seated nearby, Ronald Palmer Heath and his younger brother, Kenneth. Nothing about the encounter feels dangerous. Michael even buys the brothers a drink. To anyone watching, it looks like three men killing time at a neighborhood bar. But prosecutors would later argue that this moment marked the beginning of a planned robbery. As the night wears on, the brothers suggest going somewhere quieter to smoke marijuana. Michael agrees. He follows them out of the bar and into Heath's vehicle, unaware he will never be seen alive again. Ronald Heath drives away from the city lights, steering into a wooded, isolated area of Alachua County. The car stops on a dirt road, surrounded by darkness. When the three step out, the tone changes instantly. According to court testimony, Ronald makes a hand gesture mimicking a gun and asks his brother a simple question: "Did you get it?" Kenneth reaches beneath the seat and pulls out a small caliber handgun. The robbery begins. Michael resists. What happens next unfolds in seconds, but defines the rest of this case. A struggle breaks out. Kenneth fires a single shot into Michael's chest. Wounded and bleeding, Michael collapses to the ground, telling the men it hurts as he tries to comply. The violence does not stop. Prosecutors argued that Ronald Heath wanted no witnesses. While Michael attempted to hand over his wallet and jewelry, Ronald kicked him and pulled out a hunting knife. He tried to slit Michael's throat, but the blade was dull. Instead of a clean cut, the knife dragged across flesh in a sawing motion. When the knife failed to finish the job, Ronald turned to his brother and gave a direct command: "Kill him." Kenneth fired twice more, shooting Michael in the head. The killing was over. The brothers left the body where it fell and drove away. Less than 24 hours later, they were shopping at the Oaks Mall in Gainesville, using Michael Sheridan's credit cards to buy clothes, shoes, and jewelry. Surveillance footage and transaction records would later trace those purchases directly back to them. When investigators eventually located Ronald Heath in Georgia weeks later, he was found with items purchased using the victim's stolen cards, including a watch that could be positively identified as Michael's. The case moved quickly through the courts. Kenneth Heath accepted a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole. Ronald Heath went to trial alone. Prosecutors portrayed him as the architect of the crime, the one who initiated the robbery, escalated the violence, and ordered the final shots. The jury agreed. By a vote of 10-2, they recommended death. Ronald Palmer Heath was sent to Florida's death row. For decades, the case moved slowly through the appeals process. Heath's attorneys raised claims involving his background, mental development, and the state's execution procedures. Courts reviewed the arguments and rejected them. The conviction and sentence stood. On September 11, 2025, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed Heath's warrant. The execution was scheduled for February 10, 2026 at 6 p.m. at Florida State Prison in Stark. By then, Ronald Heath was 64 years old. He had spent more than 30 decades on death row. In the final weeks, his attorneys argued that Florida's rapid pace of executions raised constitutional concerns. They pointed to lethal injection procedures and Heath's personal history, including trauma and incarceration at a young age. The courts declined to intervene. For Michael Sheridan's family, the legal arguments changed nothing. Their loss had lasted more than 35 years. On the evening of February 10, 2026, Ronald Palmer Heath is scheduled to be escorted into Florida's execution chamber. If the warrant is carried out, the case will close not with debate or appeals, but with a final, irreversible act, one that brings an end to one of Florida's longest-running death penalty cases.
Kendrick Antonio Simpson, January 15, 2006, Oklahoma City. Inside Fritzy's, a packed hip-hop club on the city's west side, the night is loud, crowded, and volatile. 25-year-old Kendrick Antonio Simpson walks in with two friends, Jonathan Dalton and Latongo Robertson. To everyone else, they're just three guys looking for a night out. But Kendrick brought something with him that night, something he'd been warned not to bring. In the trunk of their white Chevy Monte Carlo sits an AK-47 style rifle. Inside the club, bodies press together. Music rattles the walls. Kendrick is wearing a Chicago Cubs baseball cap, a throwaway detail that within hours will become central to 2 deaths and a capital murder case. It starts small, a glance, a comment. At the bar stand 3 other young men, Glenn Palmer, Anthony Jones, and London Johnson. Someone says something about Kendrick's hat. To most people, it's nothing. Club noise, drunk talk. But to Kendrick, it's a challenge. He pulls away, agitated, and tells his friends he's going to chop them up. Minutes later, he walks back toward the trio, extending his hand like he wants to squash it, like this is about to be over. It isn't. As Kendrick approaches Glenn Palmer, a man much larger than him, the tension snaps. Palmer strikes first, knocking Kendrick to the floor. Kendrick doesn't retaliate. He gets up, wipes his mouth, and tells his friends, calmly, "We're leaving." It sounds like the end of it. It isn't. Later that night, a 7-Eleven security camera on Northwest 23rd Street captures something chilling. By chance, or by choice, the same 2 groups cross paths again. Palmer and his friends pull in to buy cigars. The Monte Carlo is already there, idling in the shadows. Kendrick sees them. He leans toward the driver and gives a quiet instruction that will seal what comes next. Follow that car. For 7 miles through Oklahoma City streets, the Monte Carlo trails the victims. Inside the car, Kendrick grows increasingly frantic. He reaches into the back seat, demanding the rifle. When one friend hesitates, Kendrick threatens him, saying if he has to grab the gun himself, there will be trouble. On Pennsylvania Avenue, the cars pull alongside each other. Kendrick rolls down the window. 20 rounds of 7.62 millimeter ammunition rip into the Chevy Caprice. Glenn Palmer, just 20 years old, is struck in the chest. Anthony Jones, 19, is hit in the head and torso. The car jumps a curb and slams into a utility pole. In the back seat, London Johnson survives by diving to the floorboards. He crawls out of the wreckage and desperately tries CPR on his friends. It's already too late. As the Monte Carlo speeds away, Kendrick Simpson turns to his friends and said 4 words prosecutors would later repeat again and again. "I'm a monster. I just shot the car up." At trial in 2007, the state didn't describe Kendrick as impulsive. They described him as calculated, a man who hunted his victims. Jurors heard about his prior violent record, including an earlier armed home invasion where he allegedly shot a business owner execution style. The defense told a different story. They talked about trauma. Kendrick was a survivor of Hurricane Katrina. He had been shot 5 times in New Orleans. He lived with a colostomy bag from a young age. Doctors diagnosed him with severe PTSD. His attorneys argued that when he was struck in the club, something broke loose, an instinctive dissociative response, not a bar fight in his mind, but a perceived threat to his life. The jury wasn't persuaded. They found the crime especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Kendrick Simpson received 2 death sentences. 20 years later, Kendrick is 45 years old. Nearly half his life has been spent inside a 6x9 cell at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. Behind bars, he changed, at least on paper. He earned his GED, took college courses, published a book of poetry. Advocacy groups, including the ACLU and the NAACP, urged clemency. They pointed to his mental health, his trauma, and his efforts at rehabilitation. On January 14, 2026, the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board met for the final time. The room was tense. Families of the victims stood and spoke. Talisha Jones, Anthony's sister, looked directly at the board and said, "When Kendrick Simpson took my brother's life, he took all our lives." The vote came down 3-2. Clemency denied. Unless Governor Kevin Stitt intervenes at the last moment, Kendrick Antonio Simpson will be executed on February 12th. He will be the first person Oklahoma puts to death in 2026. 2 young men killed over a baseball cap. 1 man awaiting death at the hands of the state.
Melvin Lee Trotter, June 16, 1986, Palmetto, Florida. Langford's Grocery wasn't just a store, it was part of the town's identity. For decades, 70-year-old Virgie Langford had run the small neighborhood market, greeting customers by name and serving generations of families who passed through its doors. In a town where routines rarely changed, Langford's Grocery was a constant. That routine shattered on a humid Monday afternoon. A truck driver stepped into the back of the store and immediately knew something was wrong. Virgie Langford lay on the floor, gravely injured and bleeding heavily. She had been stabbed 7 times, one wound cut 8 inches deep into her abdomen. Despite the severity of her injuries, she was still conscious. With what little strength she had left, Virgie told the driver she had been robbed. Then she did something that would define the investigation. She described her attacker. She said the man wore a Tropicana employee badge. She noticed the name printed on it, Melvin. Virgie Langford died later that day at the hospital, but before she passed, she gave investigators a dying declaration, one of the most powerful forms of evidence under Florida law. Police quickly focused on a local Tropicana plant worker, 25-year-old Melvin Lee Trotter. When detectives searched Trotter's home, they found a blood-stained T-shirt. Testing confirmed the blood matched Virgie Langford's. Inside the grocery store, investigators uncovered even stronger evidence. On the metal surface of a meat cooler, the apparent center of the struggle, was a clear, bloody handprint. It belonged to Melvin Trotter. Prosecutors said the motive was driven by crack cocaine addiction, which was tearing through communities across Florida in the mid-1980s. Witnesses testified that shortly after the killing, Trotter was seen carrying a red bandana filled with cash and food stamps, proceeds from the robbery, attempting to buy drugs. According to the state, a woman who had been a pillar of her community was killed for money that would be gone within hours. The evidence seemed overwhelming, but in death penalty cases, the verdict is rarely the end. In 1987, Trotter was convicted and sentenced to death. Years later, the Florida Supreme Court overturned that sentence, not because of doubts about guilt, but because the trial court had improperly used his status on community control, a form of house arrest, as an aggravating factor. At the time, state law did not allow that consideration. Trotter was resentenced in 1993. This time, the jury voted 11-1 for death. What followed was a legal battle that stretched nearly 3 decades. Defense attorneys argued that Trotter had a below-average IQ, endured severe childhood abuse, and was under extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the crime. They also questioned the purpose of carrying out an execution almost 40 years later, when the condemned man was now elderly and in declining health. Courts reviewed the arguments. The sentence remained. In January 2026, Governor Ron DeSantis signed Melvin Trotter's death warrant. Florida had just completed one of the most aggressive execution schedules in modern state history, carrying out 19 executions in 2025 alone. After a brief pause, the machinery resumed. If carried out as scheduled, Trotter would become the second person executed by Florida in a matter of weeks. Nearly 40 years after the murder, Palmetto no longer resembles the town it once was. Langford's grocery is gone. But for Virgie Langford's family, time never softened the loss. The memory of that afternoon remains fixed, not as history, but as unfinished grief. On February 24th at Florida State Prison, the state is scheduled to carry out the sentence. Unless a last-minute court order intervenes, the case that began in a small grocery store in 1986 will reach its final legal conclusion. If these stories moved you, share your thoughts below in the comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you want more stories that challenge our ideas about crime, punishment, and humanity. Thank you for watching Verdict Vault. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay compassionate, and keep seeking the truth.